since you've been gone. Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill, and you are watching a video. What a world of wonders we live in. Today we're talking Dungeons and Dragons. Pull up a chair. So okay, the way that I talk about magic in my setting, deep magic, vague and evocative magic, is that it's dangerous. That seems like a fairly simple and not very detailed way of putting it, but it's dangerous. If you've watched my how I would do the Feywild video, you maybe get a little bit more of an idea of how I think about magic. It's supernatural in the sense that it is the most natural, right? And so for me and my purposes, the way that Raw paints the Wild Magic Sorcerous Origin is maybe a little bit too silly, too frivolous. That of course does not mean that it's not right for your game. If it's right for your game, then yeehaw, party on, you know? But it doesn't quite fit with the way I'm trying to make magic feel in my own game. And so here is my little piece of home brewing in order to just ground it a little bit. This is my personal approach. I'm only gonna touch on this briefly because it's like a lot of stuff and it's not super pinned down, I guess, as if it ever could be the way that I work. But one piece of the inspiration for what I'm talking about here is that I spend a lot of time thinking about the different classes, especially functionally similar classes, and how they relate to one another, how they reflect and contrast one another. And one of these sets that I look at, I suppose, is the sort of arcane trio of wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers. Again, not to get too deep into it, but to put it very, very simply, wizards, to my mind, study, sorcerers win the jackpot. And these are the sorts of things that I like to play up and think about how the world might interact with these ideas. So for me, wizardry is regarded as like this noble, old artisan profession. Wizards have worked hard and earned respect. Whereas sorcerers, on the other hand, power has just been handed to them at random by fate. Random might not be exactly the right word. I like sorcerers to be sort of that, you know, seventh son of a seventh son kind of thing. It is happenstance, but there's a taste of fate to it. But either way, they didn't work for it through dedicated study like a wizard did. And so part of this idea becomes that wizards have trained for a very long time to use magic. And part of that training is how to apply magic in safe doses, where a wild mage is naturally attuned to the forces of magic. And so they've just had to figure it out on their own, and attached to that is this associated lack of discipline, lack of control maybe. So that's one piece of inspiration leading to this. The other thing is there's a Dungeons and Dragons magic item, an artifact called the Staff of the Magi. Those of you who've been into Dungeons and Dragons very deeply or for a long time probably know about it. Those of you who are a bit newer, I will explain. The Staff of the Magi is this super powerful staff, lots of spells, tons of spell slots, really powerful. But part of its setup is it has a couple different triggers that can make the staff explode in magic. A big old magical explosion. Potentially killing the magic user wielding it, or else, you know, rocketing them into another dimension. But that artifact stuck in my head, and I wanted to do something for a wild magic sorcerer that kind of was reminiscent of that amount of power and that type of volatile magical energy that you get with that. So anyway, without further ado, here's how these ideas manifested into my variation on the Wild Magic Sorcerous Origin. Don't know why I turned into an old man, but I did! It is untested, it is first drafty, but it's also pretty cool, so like maybe you want to take inspiration from it. That's what these videos are for. Take the bits you like, ditch the bits you don't, you know? Live your damn life, do whatever you want. So for me, the crux of a Wild Magic Sorcerer is that they can bend magic, and they are bending it until it breaks. When they take this origin at first level, they get the ability to, when they roll damage on a spell that they've cast, damage dice explode. That means whatever type of die it is, if it lands on its highest number, so if it's a d6, if it lands on a 6, you get to roll it again, and you get both the 6 and the second number. Some of you are very astute. Some of you are looking at this and going, but Dael, isn't that basically just a more powerful version of the thing that they get at 18th level? Yes, it is. Don't at me. At 6th level, A sorcerer can give advantage or disadvantage to a d20 roll nearby a number of times equal to their charisma modifier, resetting on a long rest. The point is that they're bending reality. Yes, this is extremely powerful. We'll get to why in a minute. Between you and me, if the gap between 6th level and 14th level weren't so huge, I probably would have split this up into multiple abilities, but the gap between 6th and 14th level is pretty huge, so chucking them together at 6th level. Why can't I say 6th today? The Sorcerer's Wild Magic Surge also activates. This is completely different to how it is in the rules as written. So, every time the Sorcerer decides to use their reality bending, their give advantage or disadvantage on a roll. Anytime a sorcerer does that, they have to roll percentile. And anytime a sorcerer does that, they'll have to keep track of how many times they have warped reality. So the first time you do this, you're a sorcerer, you're making a reflex save, you decide you would like advantage on that roll. So you give yourself advantage, you mark a little 1, because it's the first time you're ever using it, and you roll percentile. The second time you warp reality, maybe you're being attacked and you're like, I would like this person to miss, I'm going to give them disadvantage. You keep track of that. Now you're on 2 and you roll percentile. This number that you're keeping track of becomes your DC. If at any point you roll percentile below your DC, then the Wild Magic Surge happens. Because magic has broken. Magic has broken like the first dawning. You are so welcome. So you start to see here, the point of making this sorcerer ability so powerful is that you gotta make the carrots friggin' delicious, because there's a real big stick looming in the background. It's kind of a trade-off. Other classes just get a cool thing and there's no bad side to it. I want the Wild Magic Sorcerer to have a risk attached to it. I want it to have a bad side that can activate at any moment, but in order to then make that balance, you don't want the sorcerer to avoid using their special sorcerer abilities, do you? So you gotta A, make the thing that they're doing pretty powerful and pretty friggin' cool to tempt them into it, so that they are constantly playing a game of do I do this or do I not do this? Because in the moment, it's gonna have a really good effect, but at some point, that's gonna come back to bite me. At 14th level, the sorcerer now reduces their Wild Magic Surge DC every time they take a long rest. So every time they use it, it goes up. Every time they sleep for 8 hours, it goes back down again. They've got something to mitigate it a little bit. And then at 18th level, as if anyone has ever made it to 18th level. I'm joking, it's fine. The sorcerer no longer takes damage from the Wild Magic Surge. Damage, you say? Yes, damage. I didn't mention the damage before because we're about to get into what the Wild Magic Surge actually does when magic breaks, and that's going to be a bit long, so I wanted to leave it till after the level stuff. So, Wild Magic Surge happens. Magic has broken. Externally, for everyone who isn't the sorcerer, this looks like a massive blast of magical energy. Colors streaking outwards like an earthbound aurora. And it deals a bunch of damage. Like, a lot of damage. Like, the sorcerer's level times d10 kind of damage, with a charisma save for half damage at the level of the sorcerer's spell save DC. Also, for every 10 feet away from the sorcerer that you are, you take 10 less damage. But that's what it is from the outside. It's like, so it damages the sorcerer, it damages everyone around them. That for me is in there a little bit just to flavor that idea of A, magic breaking, and B, this maybe cultural idea for my games at least, that sorcerers aren't super trusted or welcomed with open arms by random people, because they're like, you could blow up at any minute. It might be fun to drip feed information to the other players. They can have a bit of information as a treat. A little taste of drama, as it were. You could make it so that the paladin was in Ridgeford Village the day a sorcerer broke. They saw for themselves that there was nothing left but a crater and shadows burnt onto the wall. The party wizard has studied magic. They better understand its limits. They know that what the sorcerer is doing is irresponsible, even if the sorcerer themselves doesn't. This flavor stuff, it's not something that you have to include, but I'm just letting you know that there's an opening there. Here's the sorcerer, they're super powerful, but maybe they're super dangerous as well. So that's what it looks like from the outside, but for the sorcerer, you see everything the same, but it feels like you're looking at it upside down. Like you can sense for the first time how gravity is holding you, clinging above the endless void. You feel the distance between yourself and the world around you. All the negative space that makes up reality. Everyone, everything, every atom. You see the celestial bodies wheeling overhead. Sun, moon, stars, day and night, cycling over and over again in the casting of light and shadow. In the space of a minute, rain clouds gather above you, or is it under you? And a torrent of rain crashes down, soaks you to the bone. Then, just as quickly, it ceases, and the clouds are cleared again, revealing once more those ever-spinning skies, eclipses and star deaths and endless falling comets hurtling through the cosmos. And you're witnessing it all, now fully comprehending the breadth of existence, the lifespan of the universe. This moment is nothing. Your lifetime is a heartbeat. And then it stops. You know what I'm recommending you do? You turn it into an alternative future episode. Yeah, boy! So now, ideally, the percentile roll with the DC, that's by how many times you've done it, ideally that will mean that it happens slightly later in a campaign rather than earlier on. But my idea is, once they roll under that DC, once magic breaks around them, the sorcerer is rocketed into a possible future. Hopefully it would happen at a reasonable point to finish your session, but I mean, we can't be sure of that. It could happen in the first combat that happens immediately. Either way, I think it's worth it to stop the game there, say that you'll need to plan some stuff for next session, play a different game until the end of your hangout time, your game night with your buds, and get prepped for next session. Imagine this, right? The sorcerer is just like, oh no, what happened? I just exploded. Meanwhile, you contact all the other party members and you pull a reverse nails. You know the stuff that happened with nails in the chain on MCDM? It's a reverse of that. Everyone's in on it except for the sorcerer. Because now you can chat to those players and construct like a dark future version of themselves. The darkest timeline. The paladin has a goatee and an eye patch. The bard is dead. The druid has a blue streak in her hair. Work with those players to construct this possible future, right? You can even use this possible future as a chance to give your party a glimpse of a major upcoming threat. Is the countryside gonna be wiped out by an army of the undead? Raised by a necromancer the party hasn't even heard of yet? Will the Empress be assassinated at her Diamond Jubilee? This, if it happens, is an opportunity for a huge plot hook in that you're showing your sorcerer a vision of a dark future. So that way the party will have enough information to try and stop that future from becoming a reality. Save the friggin' cheerleader! Pick a couple things that you can talk to the party sans sorcerer about. Say, here are 3 important things that have happened in the world in the intervening years since the sorcerer vanished from your perspective. As a result of that, what are your characters like? What have they been doing? What has happened? Then next session, come together. The sorcerer is just like, what is up from their perspective? Sure, magic broke, but they're still in the same place and their party are just gone now. So now you have a whole mini arc, a session or a couple of sessions kind of centered around your sorcerer, where they have to go and find help, stumble across the events of this dark reality, and find a way back home again. Always gotta build in a way for them to get back. It's such a classic trope and it would be so much fun to play. Fun to run too, let's be honest. And once they find their way back, the party has a new thing on the horizon that they have to watch out for. So ideally this would only happen once. Ideally it would happen sort of in the mid-late game, hopefully adding the ability to mitigate that Wild Surge DC at level 14 would drop it down. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Wild Magic Sorcerous Origin. It started somewhere a little more simple and ended up, of course, in time travel. How could it not? I hope you enjoyed the video. You know how YouTube works. You could show me that you enjoyed the video using the YouTube functions. Apart from that, I do believe that's it. I'm done. Email this to your grandma. I'll see you some other time. Magic has broken like the first dawn.